Welcome to The Explainer. We are so thrilled you're joining us today because, wow, we have an absolutely incredible story to unpack for you. When you think of international football royalty, who's the first team that comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's Germany. Four-time world champions, right? A ruthless, well-oiled machine of efficiency, stepping onto the pitch expecting nothing short of total dominance.
Absolutely. And standing in their way was Ecuador, a team walking right into a true David versus Goliath clash at the 2026 World Cup. I mean, going into this match, very few people gave the South American side a fighting chance. But what actually unfolded, it left the entire footballing world absolutely stunned. It's this massive roller coaster of a story. Early disaster, sheer resilience, and a dramatic edge-of-your-seat finish that literally nobody saw coming. So let's jump straight into this.
To really appreciate this upset, you have to look at this number, 0. Before lining up against a massive European powerhouse like Germany, Ecuador had exactly 0 goals and 0 wins in this entire tournament.
Right, they were staring right down the barrel of early elimination. The pressure on these players must have been suffocating. They had already suffered a highly frustrating 1-0 loss to Ivory Coast, and they followed that up with a completely scoreless draw against Curaçao.
You really have to imagine how draining that is psychologically for a squad, because across those first 2 matches, Ecuador registered 32 attempts on goal. 32, and they had absolutely nothing to show for it. It's like they were just attacking, and hitting a brick wall every single time.
Exactly. And now they desperately needed a result against Germany. A German team, by the way, that had just confidently cruised through their own first 2 matches. Ecuador needed a miracle simply to stay alive in the tournament. The odds were stacked so incredibly high against them.
So, here is our roadmap for the Explainer today. First, we'll set the stage for this ultimate World Cup upset. Then, we'll break down the anatomy of this 90-minute thriller.
After that, we'll dive into how Ecuador completely erupted in joy.
Next, we'll impartially examine the fascinating trouble brewing in Germany's camp.
And finally, we'll zoom out to look at the broader round of 32 picture.
All right, Section 1. The ultimate World Cup upset. Let's set the stage for the stunning football miracle.
To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this game, we have to talk about the immense weight resting on the shoulders of Ecuador's head coach, Sebastian Beccacece. After failing to score against Ivory Coast and Curaçao, local fans back in Ecuador were fiercely critical of him.
While public opinion was turning incredibly sour, the overarching narrative heading into this match was basically that their tournament was effectively over before it had even really begun. And you have to remember, that negativity is compounded by the colossal size of the mountain Ecuador had to climb. They hadn't defeated a European team in 13 years.
Just think about how long 13 years is in footballing terms. That is multiple World Cup cycles. Entire generations of players have come and gone since Ecuador last managed to win over a UFA nation. And that last win? It was all the way back in a 2013 friendly against Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal.
The stakes genuinely couldn't have been higher. By finally slaying this giant, they secured their first trip to the World Cup knockout stages since the 2006 tournament, where, if you recall, they eventually fell to England. Overcoming a 13-year drought amid all that fierce criticism makes this result absolutely legendary.
Moving on to Section 2. Anatomy of a thriller. A 90-minute roller coaster at New York/New Jersey Stadium. Okay. If you were an Ecuador fan, the very start of this game was your absolute worst nightmare realized. In the second minute, Leroy Sané scores for Germany, specifically at 1 minute and 49 seconds into the match. Which is wild. That is Germany's fastest World Cup goal since 1934. Just picture the atmosphere in that stadium for a second. You haven't scored all tournament, you absolutely need a win to survive, and within 109 seconds you are down a goal to Manuel Neuer and the mighty German machine. The sense of dread in the stands must have been completely palpable. But then comes the 9th minute, the eruption. Nilson Angulo, who was making his very first start of the entire tournament, answers back almost immediately. It was like a lightning bolt. It completely shifted the momentum and woke the entire crowd back up. It totally did. And that fighting response sets the stage for the 77th minute. Gonzalo Plata, fully making up for a missed opportunity he had earlier in the half, stretches out to poke the ball past Neuer for the dramatic winner.
Let's break down these crucial moments a bit more, because that equalizer wasn't just some simple tap-in. Angulo picked up a loose ball, found this tiny, fleeting pocket of space, and actually fired it straight through the legs of Alexander Pavlovic to beat the dive of Manuel Neuer. A nutmeg goal against Germany.
Just incredible individual skill under immense pressure. But the real nail-biting tension hit at the start of the second half. The referee, Tori Penso, initially awarded a penalty to Germany. We've all seen games completely derailed by a penalty against a heavy favorite, right? If Germany scores there, the game and Ecuador's tournament is almost certainly over. But then VAR steps in. The video assistants review the play, and they spot an earlier foul by Leroy Sané on Pedro Vite. Time literally stands still in the stadium while everyone waits for the decision. And then, the penalty is officially overturned. Man, you can only imagine the psychological boost that gave Ecuador. It was the ultimate lifeline, and it set the stage perfectly for Plata's heroics in the 77th minute, where he brilliantly steered the ball into the roof of the net right ahead of Neuer to seal the deal.
Up next, Section 3, Ecuador erupts in joy. The emotional aftermath of a national triumph.
It's one thing to look at the tactics on the pitch, but it's a whole other thing to understand what this victory actually means to the people. When that final whistle blew, New York/New Jersey Stadium basically turned into a giant, pulsating yellow street party. And that celebration quickly crossed borders back home. Can you imagine your country's president just canceling work tomorrow because of a sports win? Well, the president of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, who was actually watching the game right there from the stands, took to social media and said, and I quote, "Tomorrow is a public holiday. I extend my deepest gratitude to the players and coach who, despite enduring countless criticisms, rose again." And he was completely serious. The president issued Executive Decree number 431, officially suspending work across both the public and private sectors so the entire country could celebrate. Essential services were kept running, of course, but otherwise the entire nation just stopped to party for this historic round of 32 birth.
And you really have to dig into Coach Sebastian Beccacese's emotional arc here. I mean, the guy went from being public enemy #1 during the group stages and during absolutely brutal criticism all week long to this highly cinematic moment of pure release.
Exactly. When that final whistle confirmed they had actually slain the giant, he didn't just casually high-five his coaching staff and walk down the tunnel. He sprinted over, literally climbed the stadium's chain-link fence, and found his wife of 21 years to kiss her right there in the chaotic crowd.
It is such a wonderfully human moment. The relief and joy were just pouring out of him. Beccacece instantly transformed from a heavily scrutinized manager into an absolute World Cup cold hero in the span of just 90 minutes. Though it's worth noting, he humbly stated afterwards that this qualification wasn't about him at all. It was a gift for the Ecuadorian people to celebrate and enjoy.
Moving to Section 4, Trouble in Germany's Camp, a clash of tactical philosophies and team desire.
Now, while Ecuador is throwing a literal national holiday, a very public disagreement was spilling out into the post-match interviews for Germany. We are seeing a complete split in how the German side views this loss, and the contrast between the players and the coach is stark.
It really is. On one side, you have the players. Captain Joshua Kimmich and forward Deniz Undav were brutally honest with the press, claiming that Ecuador simply wanted it more. Undav said Ecuador gave 100% in every action, and the defeat was entirely deserved. They felt it was purely a matter of heart and aggression.
But on the other side, head coach Julian Nagelsmann completely rejected that narrative. When asked by reporters about his team's perceived lack of desire, he literally said, "Please stop the nonsense," honestly.
It's so fascinating to unpack. You have the players on the field feeling like they were physically outworked, while the manager insists his players went full throttle. Nagelsmann argued that questioning their effort was simply too striking a claim for him to accept. So what really caused the breakdown from his perspective?
Nagelsmann's perspective really comes through in this quote. He stated, "We have to learn that after a good start, we can play with more composure instead of suddenly switching positions too much."
Basically, he blamed a lack of tactical discipline. He felt the team resorted to way too much freestyle play out there. To put it simply, instead of sticking to their assigned zones and trusting the overall game plan, players started roaming around trying to make individual plays after taking that early lead.
Right, and when players abandon their structure, gaps open up everywhere. They lost their organized shape, gave the ball away too cheaply, and essentially invited a highly energetic Ecuador squad right back into the match. It's a gripping debate to watch unfold. A structural, tactical breakdown according to the manager versus the players feeling they just got beaten on pure desire. Finally, Section 5, the round of 32 picture. Who else is advancing in the 2026 World Cup? Let's see how this all fits into the larger tournament framework. Here are the final standings for Group E. Despite all the drama and the shocking loss, Germany actually still wins the group with 6 points thanks to a superior goal difference. And right alongside them is Ivory Coast, who also finished with 6 points after a very convincing 2-0 win over Curaçao, which was powered by a brilliant 2-goal performance from Nicolas Pepe. And then, there in third place is Ecuador with 4 points. Now, you might be wondering, in this expanded tournament format, does finishing third mean you automatically go home? Not at all. They advance as a wild card. Exactly.
The format allows the 8 best third-place teams across all the groups to secure a spot in the knockouts. Ecuador's massive 4 points guarantee them one of those lifelines. Curaçao, unfortunately, finishes at the bottom of the table with 1 point and heads home.
Glancing across the other groups that wrapped up on this decisive match day, the Netherlands looked really strong, topping their group with a 3-1 win over Tunisia.
Japan and Sweden both secure their knockout spots after a hard-fought 1-1 draw. And hey, there's actually an amazing fact about Sweden here. They scored 4 goals from outside the penalty box in the group stage. That matches an impressive World Cup record set by the legendary Brazil squad back in 2006.
That is a phenomenal stat. You don't see that every day. Finally, Australia punched their ticket to the knockouts with a really gritty 0-0 draw against Paraguay.
So the knockout bracket is really starting to take shape, giving us this thrilling mix of the traditional expected heavyweights and these fantastic, momentum-driven underdog stories that make the World Cup so incredibly special.
And that brings us to the ultimate question for you to ponder. With the entire nation behind them, an actual public holiday declared, and a massive giant officially slain, how far can this historic momentum carry Ecuador in the knockouts?
It's the absolute magic of the tournament, isn't it? I mean, they came into this game completely counted out. They were heavily criticized, couldn't buy a goal for over 180 minutes of football, and were down 1-0 in under 2 minutes against a powerhouse.
It really is the ultimate David versus Goliath outcome. Now they are playing with house money and immense belief. Will their newfound finishing touch lead them on a deep Cinderella run, or will the sheer physical and emotional toll of this massive effort eventually catch up with them in the round of 32?
We absolutely can't wait to find out as the knockout stage begins. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible match with us today, and we will see you on the next Explainer.